So you guys saw that article in the New York Times and released this rather extraordinary 4-paragraph statement calling this disgraceful, offensive, false, a latest attempt by the media to divide the administration. There are some who might see that and say, methinks the VP doth protest too much.
Well, he does find it very offensive. I mean, the vice president is entirely focused on advancing the president's agenda and doing everything possible to make sure that in 2020, the vice president is reelected as vice president alongside President Donald Trump.
What is so offensive about it?
Any suggestion that he might be planning a run in 2020, his entire focus is on advancing the president's agenda and taking the steps that are necessary to make sure that we're delivering on the promises to the American people.
Okay, but respectfully, that's not what the article says. The article points out some of the steps that the vice president has taken. So is it or is it not true that he did in fact set up a PAC and that it's essentially more than double the money raised by President Trump's PAC?
It is true that he does have a
leadership PAC. Is it or is it not true?
But it also is. But what needs to be included is that Ivanka Trump introduced the vice president at a fundraising event just 2 or 3 weeks ago.
I'm not saying that's not the case, but I'm saying
entirely focused.
But I'm saying if it is true that he has a PAC and it's raising more money by the president, is it or is it not true that he went to Joni Ernst's pig roast in Iowa
at the invitation of the president?
Okay, but it's true, right?
He went and helped.
Is it or is it not true that he's been meeting with donors at his residence?
He has been meeting with business leaders.
That is true. That is true that he's meeting with donors. Now, I'm not saying he's gearing up for a run, Mark, and I get that you're pushing back on that idea, but what is so offensive about putting actual correct facts in a piece and pointing them out and laying them out in an article?
Well, I think it's important to have context. It's important to know that Ivanka Trump introduced the vice president at the fundraiser. The first check that leadership PAC cut was to the president's re-election campaign, that he went to Iowa at the request of the president to show support for Senator Joni Ernst.
The article rightfully notes.
That's why.
Sure, it rightfully notes he even privately has not even said that he's trying to distance himself from the president. Yet these steps are happening. Hypothetically, if the president were, for whatever reason, decide not to run in 2020, which is something that could happen, are you saying Vice President Pence would not step up and try to take that role?
Well, I don't talk about hypotheticals. All I know is that every day
you do talk about hypotheticals. We talk about hypotheticals all the time. So I'm just saying, are you ruling out that possibility?
What I'm talking about is that we are all operating under the assumption every day that the president is seeking re-election in 2020. That is our goal. That's our focus on delivering his agenda and making sure that we are in a position where the president can be reelected and continue to lead this country for another 7.5 years.
So then 2 questions. And why so early with these interactions with donors, with setting up a PAC? That has not typically happened 6 months, less than 6 months into an administration.
Well, the vice president was governor prior to serving as vice president, so he had some political assets and operations that could not translate to the federal level without the creation of a federally regulated infrastructure. So that's what you saw in doing that. But the bottom line of that leadership PAC is that he's out there supporting Republican senators and House members who support the president's agenda. This provides him to be able to travel to go talk about the need to have good Republican leadership that are supportive of the president through the next couple of years, and that's very important. It's something that vice presidents have done throughout their tenure.
So when this piece from the New York Times says that some of the vice president's advisors are intimating, perhaps, to high-level Republican donors in that class, that the vice president would be ready to step in if the president were to decide not to run, is that incorrect?
It is incorrect, so
the vice president is not ready to step in if the president were to decide not to run.
Those advisors have pushed back to say that those conversations did not happen that way, and if donors or never-Trumpers who might be quoted in there might have read conversations differently, the vice president's focus, the focus of his entire team, is entirely focused on advancing the president's agenda and putting him in a position to be reelected.
So this statement slams fake news. It says it is false. It says it is offensive. It seems like your problem is more with some of the Republicans quoted in this piece than the piece itself. If you have an issue with Charlie Dent for interpreting some of this information the way he did, have you talked to Charlie Dent about it?
Well, what I'm talking about from the vice president's side is that from the vice president's side in that article, this is a conjecture, speculation, and half-truths, not the full context of the entire story.
Respectfully, again, though, clearly some of these things are true. These things are true, though. He is raising money, he is meeting with donors, and he is traveling to states that typically you don't travel to unless you're setting the stage for a president.
But if you don't include the rest of the fact that he's doing that with the support of the Trump administration, Ivanka Trump introducing him, then you have half the story. You don't have the full picture.
There have been in the past discussions about vice presidents who have wanted to perhaps take more of a robust role in an administration. I think about Dick Cheney, for example. There's never been a statement like this that's been released from the White House pushing back against an article like this. Is this aimed at an audience of one, somebody who is sitting in Bedminster right now who might be reading the New York Times and wondering why the vice president might be in fact creating the shadow campaign?
I think the one thing that we know about both President Trump and Vice President Pence is that they're going to speak their minds directly to the American people and correct issues where they believe things are either taken out of context or in fact are fake news. What you're seeing is the vice president in this case pushing back strongly, emphatically, that he is not engaging in some sort of shadow operation.
So
which
why
was
didn't you just walk
insinuated.
into the president's office and tell him that? Why release a statement to the media about it? Clearly this is aimed at President
When
Trump.
you have something that appears on the front page of the Sunday New York Times that's based on conjecture, speculation, that's suggesting something that is not true, it's important that the vice president speak his mind and clear the record on that, and which is another reason why I'm here today.